Welcome back. It is exactly 16 after 8 o'clock. And as China celebrates its 73rd birthday, commemorating 73 years being in power, South Africa and China have made a further commitment to cooperate. Let's unpack this story with none other than Gideon Chitanga. A very good morning to you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Gideon, can you hear me? You're breaking up.
Yes, yes. Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Thank you so very much for your time. Look forward to the discussion this morning. Now, in January 2023, which was a couple of months ago, we do know that South Africa, jointly with China, celebrated 25 years of formal diplomatic relations amid rapidly changing geopolitics. And this seems to be of concern to the United Nations. Antonio Guterres has made a statement that there's this drifting away from international cooperation, obviously referring to this relationship between South Africa and China. Good morning, welcome, and what do you make of that statement?
Well, I think that the UN Secretary General, the context of the reference of his speech was quite broader. In my view, his concern was about more polarization, if you like, between the West and the rest of the global community. Of a range of problematic issues, Ukraine, climate change, and so on. And with the particular case of Ukraine, South Africa took a position that emphasized the need for diplomacy and dialogue. And this is the position that China also took, basically saying they were opposed to the escalated conflict and sanctions against Russia, but at the same time, they were calling for dialogue and mediation. This kind of diplomacy was a departure from the mainstream posture that the West had taken. And I think with respect to the UN position, broadly, the UN had emphasized the need for peace. And then with regards to the efforts by the US and Western countries to sanction Russia within the UN framework. If I recall very well, South Africa and other African countries, they stepped aside. They did not want to take a position of sanction. And in my view, it is important in the multilateral society to have different positions which are democratic, including creating room for dialogue and negotiations and a kind of diplomacy that is opposed to conflict. So what I would say is the close relationship between South Africa and China renders room to such kind of diplomacy, less military, aggressive, coercive action, more dialogue.
There was also a bit of sensitivity around Nancy Pelosi's visit. I think you and I did chat about it a couple of months or a couple of weeks ago,
yes.
Regarding her visit to Taiwan. Once again, South Africa and I should imagine the entire African continent didn't comment and didn't take sides in that matter. And for us, we need to be very diplomatic as far as these type of situations play out, simply because our very strong ties with China. So that was a good step from the part of South Africa, was it not?
See, with respect to the visit of Nancy Pelosi, if I recall having a discussion, and one thing that I mentioned in that discussion was that the visit, from the perspective of Nancy Pelosi, was ill-timed, given already the many challenges the world is facing, including the conflict in in Ukraine, and it was obviously going to polarize the global community. China has a one China policy, which necessarily means that it says all the countries, including parts of the Straits or the peninsula, of the Taiwan Peninsula, under China. And in terms of their relationship with the U.S., they signed several laws which were part of the framework that then opened diplomatic relations between China and the U.S. And one of the key issues was the recognition of the whole sovereignty, total sovereignty of China, including Taiwan. The main problem is, if you look at the convention in terms of their language, I think for the U.S., they want to treat them as vague to allow them to maneuver within the sense of advancing their interests. While it's for China, it's clear that what China is saying is that Taiwan is part of China, and any issue about Taiwan relates to the sovereignty and the self-determination of China. And African countries, 53 African countries from the African Union, they respect this notion of sovereignty. For African countries, because of the history of colonialism and oppression, national sovereignty and self-determination is quite a sensitive issue. But what is key in their relationship with China is that they recognize the issue of the national sovereignty of China. They respect the one China policy. And South Africa has done that since 1994, I think, when it reopened, when the country reopened diplomatic relations with China. So to the extent that Pelosi was seen to be violating that principle, I think a lot of African countries would have openly or quietly sided with China.
So obviously, amidst a climate of frosty geopolitical relations, particularly between the global north and the global south, bilateral relations between Pretoria and Beijing thankfully continues to blossom, because in the same vein then, when we look at issues around the South Africa-China Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, which has served as a bond that has kept these relations flourishing, resulting in China being South Africa's biggest foreign trade partner over the last 13 years. Last year alone, South Africa's total volume trade with China reached 544 billion African rands. And Chinese enterprises have created 400,000 jobs in South Africa. They are talking about creating another 20,000 within 3 years. Where do we look for evidence of these 400,000 jobs that were created through our direct link with China? And when and how do we also continue monitoring that we'll see more job creation going forward over the next 3 years?
You know that it's a very precise question that you are asking, and I think it's very important. Other than the statistics that you gave, and I think which are very important, which gives us a clue, I think I would say there is a lot of work to exactly provide, let's say, much more required evidence or public information so that people are aware of these levels of engagement. But the information that you share is information that comes from policymakers, and to that extent, I would like to trust that information that is concrete and it's information that is true. And obviously, different statistics would vary slightly, but it's quite clear that China is the trading partner with South Africa. It's also quite clear that after the U.S., China has the largest number of companies and businesses, foreign business investments in South Africa. It's also quite clear that South Africa is a major trading partner and strategic partner for China. And you see also this that in the sense that the U.S. is increasingly interested in forging an equally closer relationship with South Africa. But in terms of validating the statistics, I would not hazard to go into that. I think it's work that public institutions should be able to be engaged in to provide more information, not only about China, but about the US and about any form of external trade or business with South Africa, because it is a matter of public interest.
Gideon, you rightfully have stressed that it is a matter of public interest, very especially as our youth unemployment rates are so high. This information, if it is in fact correct, needs to go out into the public and boost confidence that work is being done behind the scenes for job creation with these bilateral partnerships with China and other such countries. Having said that, is Stella Ndabeni Abrams, Minister of Small Business Development, would she be the one responsible for for sharing this type of information? And if so, she's losing a golden opportunity by not sharing this information, because it certainly will boost confidence in the country, very especially amongst our youth.
Yes, you are absolutely right. It's information that relates to partly to the ministry that governs the small business sectors, but it also goes to various sections of government, like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Economic Development, the Ministry of Finance, and it's also government departments that are included. It's also civil society that needs to have an interest in these partnerships because they play a role in informing the public. So I think that the deep sections of society play different roles, but obviously for the sake of accountability, it should start with government to say, these are the institutions that we are building, these are the numbers, these are the companies, these are the people who are working in different parts, and to link communities, particularly because, like you said, it is very important to address the problem of unemployment. And as we speak about the statistics, a lot of young people who are in different parts of South Africa, they don't have jobs and they don't know where to look for jobs. But what they hear from our public discourses are big numbers of companies emerging, investments in billions. And their question is, where are these companies and where is the investment? The second thing is South Africa is a semi-federal system. So I think the provincial government should be very much proactive, because when foreign direct investment filters down, it goes to their provinces and links with the people from their provinces and their districts. So there should be mechanisms through which these the provincial level institutions can be held accountable in the sense of providing information and awareness into the community.
And goodness me, we do need these type of good news stories, don't we? Having said that,
Yes,
what does spring to mind, Gideon, is Operation Pakiza. We know that recently a team of Chinese experts visited South Africa to assist with the development of small harbors in the country. And that certainly was very morale boosting. And it gave us hope that something is now being done as far as these bilateral relationships are concerned. And we know that that project in particular forms part of the larger Oceans Economy Initiative in South Africa. So hopefully we're going to be seeing more of these type of initiatives, in throughout the country. And then having said that, is this part of our BRICS partnership? Is this how it's playing out? If so, then it is certainly good news, is it not?
I think opening up the ocean economy is good news. And it's good news in the sense that if you think about South Africa in its history, a lot of black people are marginalized from the ocean economy. And I mean black people broadly. Their participation is limited, they are excluded. So government creating partnerships in these kinds of sectors where the formerly marginalized communities are then given space to participate. I think that would be a greater way forward in terms of empowerment, in terms of just opening new avenues of job creation, and as well as business opportunities, entrepreneurship. So this is great news for me. But like we were saying earlier, it is quite important to look at the available mechanisms, the sense in which there is public awareness about this opportunity, the kind of law ownership, so that we do not end up providing statistics from above, and people on the ground hear these things as stories they hear on the radio or from newspapers, but they own up and they evidently participate directly in these initiatives.
Absolutely. We need the evidence to prove that this is, in fact, happening. Having said that, I'm wondering if the Minister of Transport shouldn't get involved with, start having engagements with BRICS and China in particular, because China has, it's a vast country, it has an amazing railway network, and we here in South Africa are suffering. Transnet is at an absolute standstill. Our tracks and everything else has been stolen. We've bought the wrong size of trains through the Spanish. So I think Transnet needs to start engaging with people and the Minister of Transport, obviously with Stella Ndebele Abrams, and let's get involved with the Chinese in a more meaningful relationship to get our railways up and running, because we've seen the devastation on our national roads. It is absolutely untenable for this to carry on like it is. Lives are being lost. The roads are in an impossible state, and the only way we can start rebuilding our lives and our country is by getting Transnet up and running.
Absolutely. I think China is in a position to competitively provide the required technologies. But having said that, I would also mention that it is more important to look at the transfer of skills, and China has already done that in other partnerships through the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation Forum. These opportunities, and particularly for South Africa, because South Africa is the biggest economy in South Africa. When it frames and creates such partnerships, it sort of creates a model for African countries. There's no justification for South Africa to have dilapidated transport infrastructure, especially railway, which remains the cheapest if it's properly maintained. But I also think we have a lot of domestic problems that relate, filters down to poverty, to crime, which is part of a cycle. And this then motivates people to destroy their own infrastructure and their own property. But still, having said that, I think China is in a position to provide their required technologies, their required finances within its framework and within its the framework of its partnerships with South Africa. And South Africa is sitting in an immense opportunity. Also, the same relationship could provide employment and opportunities for local entrepreneurship that would create more jobs.
Absolutely. If Transnet can be revived, if government and politicians could just see the wood for the trees, or the trees for the wood, or however the saying goes, here's a golden opportunity to get the country up and running and to create hundreds of thousands of jobs. I alluded just now to the BRICS partnership. We also know that next year China and South Africa will celebrate the 25th anniversary of our diplomatic relationship between each other, and South Africa will be taking over the BRICS presidency. How significant is that?
It is very significant. I think that the president of South Africa not in terms of it will consider framing a national and a continental agenda that he can submit for the BRICS within the broader framework of the relationship for the 5 countries. South Africa for the BRICS is at an entry point into the continent. The second thing is the conversations in BRICS. In the last meetings, they were talking about raising enough substantial capital for investment within the BRICS countries, creating more economic opportunities within the BRICS countries, creating equal trade, increase the trade between the BRICS countries. So I think this it creates a big market for South Africa. It creates an opportunity for South Africa to at least raise a voice within the BRICS, but also rally the BRICS to advocate for multilateral issues that are of concern to the African continent. So this is a very important opportunity, and I hope President Ramaphosa will take it with both hands and use it effectively.
Gideon, and that's where we have to leave it. Always a pleasure talking with you. Your deep insights into politics at play, not only in South Africa, but globally. Gideon Chitanga is Research Associate at the African Center for the Study of the U.S. at Wits University. I thank you, sir. Till the next time, go well.
Thank you.
It is exactly 8:38 a.m. This is News and Views right here on Salam Media. Do stay with us in a minute or two. We will be talking with Khulekani Skosana, the International Relations Officer at the ANC Youth League.